To begin with, can you tell us about the Batman story you just did with Damon Lindelof?
So yeah, I did a 10-page Batman story with Damon Lindelof, and both of us were really interested in exploring a couple aspects of the Batman character. We both really love the idea of like an inexperienced Bruce Wayne as Batman, where maybe he's still more Bruce Wayne and not fully consumed by the Batman persona yet. And for me, that's one of the things that makes that character so interesting, is that especially in the later years and the more recent adventures of Batman, I think that line between Bruce Wayne and Batman is so blurred now, where I don't even know if there is a Bruce Wayne anymore. He's become so consumed with his mission of vengeance that he's just become Batman, and Bruce Wayne's just an act, And we kind of wanted to show the opposite, where he still hasn't figured out what Batman is yet, and he's still very much Bruce Wayne. And it's really a story about his vulnerability and how other superheroes have very clear vulnerabilities, like kryptonite or the color yellow, which he mocks in the story, and things like that. Whereas him, because he's human, he feels like he actually doesn't have one of those kind of easily identifiable vulnerabilities, and Alfred teaches him a little lesson about that. Teaches him a lesson about separating Bruce and Batman, and so that's kind of what we were interested in exploring, Yeah, I mean, I was always more so a DC Comics fan than a Marvel Comics fan as a kid, and if you're a DC Comics fan, it's, the two sort of pillars are Batman and Superman. So, and I think like a lot of people, Batman's easier to identify with because he is human and he's flawed and he's a darker character, and it inherently makes him cooler on the surface, So he's much easier to kind of latch onto. And then, of course, like when we were kids, people our age, like we grew up with Frank Miller's work was still coming out and fresh, like Year One and Dark Knight Returns, and those completely redefined the character and the way you could tell Batman stories or superhero stories to some degree. All of that combined, really, Batman becomes a big part of your comic book fandom, I think. So yeah, I was always a Batman fan, and just visually, he's one of the most iconic and coolest characters as well. His silhouette is instantly recognizable, as opposed to other heroes. So it's there's something about his look and everything about him that's just so cool.
So, presuming that you, like me, kind of drew the Batman silhouette in your notebooks when you were in the 8th grade, what's it like to go from doing that to actually doing this on a professional basis now?
It's really daunting. I mean, I'm so used to drawing my own characters now, because I've never actually, other than doing one Jonah Hex issue, I've only ever drawn my own characters professionally. There's no other influences on that. It's all just however I draw them, that's what they look like, Whereas Batman, there's been so many incredible portrayals of the character by so many amazing artists, far better than I'll ever be, And so when you get the chance to do Batman, you start looking at all these people like J.H. Williams and Frank Miller and Brian Boland and all these like kind of iconic takes on him, and it's so hard not to be influenced by them and try to draw like them a little bit, because you love how they draw Batman so much. So you kind of have to. It took me a good couple weeks of drawing Batman every day, and kind of getting that out of my system, where like one day I'd kind of be looking too much at J.H. Williams as Batman, and one day I'd be looking too much at whoever, and you kind of have to get it out of your system and just kind of get all that out of the way and just kind of draw it like he is your own character. And it was when I finally just started drawing him like he's a character from Sweet Tooth or Essex County or something, one of my own, that's when I kind of latched on to, okay, this is my Batman. But it does take it's very daunting, I mean, it's like I said before, Batman and Superman are kind of the two archetypes of superheroes, You have your classic light, hopeful, ultra-powerful character in Superman, and then you have your sort of dark, brooding, vengeful, human character in Batman. So, and I think most superheroes, I mean, you could really argue that both Batman and Superman are derived from Doc Savage and The Shadow, and sorry about that. But anyways, if we're just talking about that, I think all the modern kind of DC and Marvel characters are a variation on one of those two guys to some degree. And it's like I said before, who doesn't enjoy the dark, brooding, kind of flawed character more than the perfect character, the godlike character, That's why it's so easy to love seeing Batman punching Superman, because it's like, he represents authority and power and this disconnect with the everyman, whereas Bruce is one of us, and he's experienced loss the way we have, and he's flawed, and he's probably insane, and to be honest, and he's not. You can relate, As a kid, we all could imagine if I just train hard enough, maybe I could be like Batman, But none of us could ever fly. So
no.
So I think there's just those those basic kind of things that anyone can relate to with him as opposed to other superheroes. You know? Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a cliche at this point, but the Frank Miller stuff really is, I think, the pinnacle of Batman stories. Dark Knight Returns and Year One. I don't know which one's better. They're both so different and so amazing. So those are just kind of givens at this point. But if you look beyond that, I mean, to me as an artist as well, you kind of look at stories, comics in two different ways. I look at stuff that I love as a complete story, as a complete comic, like Dark Knight Returns or whatever. But then there's also the other side of me, the artist in me, that looks at just the visual aspect of certain things are amazing. Like the Killing Joke, Brian Boland's Killing Joke is just so exquisitely drawn. And when the Tim Burton Batman movies were coming out when I was like 12, 13, you know, that book had just come out, and I just remember me and my friends sitting in our classroom, you know, and just trying to copy all the little tiny Brian Boland line Batmans, you know. So there's that one I always come back to. There's been so much good stuff that, you know, I think my friend Scott Snyder is doing some really good work on the character now and really doing some interesting things with his relationship to Gotham that I really like. As you know, Gotham as a character is always an important part of the mythology, and I think Scott's really tapping into that. You know, it's one of those things we sit around talking in a bar. You think of all kinds of great Batman comics, but when you're on camera, I can only think of Frank Miller. So.